Hello, everyone. Hope you are doing well. Welcome to episode number 8 of Love is Your Medicine podcast. Today, I'll be talking on the subject, you have a choice. And every day, we're confronted with different circumstances, different challenges, different obstacles. We have a choice to make. What am I talking about? Well, stick around and let's get into this subject on episode number 8. Hello again, and welcome to Love is Your Medicine podcast. I am Mitch Wright, your host for the next few moments. I appreciate you tuning in, listening to another episode. We are at episode number 8. It's already the middle of January. I can't believe that time is just moving right along. Time stops for no one. You may have noticed I missed a week in releasing episode number 8. It's just been busy and hectic, a lot going on in our lives lately, so I needed a week to kind of clear my head, take some mental time for myself to just regroup, reassess, refocus. Nothing wrong with doing it. We all need to do that from time to time. So I always want the information I bring to you to be of use, of value. So yeah, I just needed to take a week for myself to make sure that my next episode would be a good one. After all, you're taking time out of your busy schedule or giving me the opportunity to talk to you about things that's on my mind. And like I said, I hope that you find value in it. So you have a choice. I was thinking over the weekend what I wanted to talk about next. And I think this is something that always stands out to me. Each one of us individually has a choice that we make. And okay, yeah, we have different choices every day. You know, what are we going to wear? What are we going to eat? What are we going to do later on? What am I doing after work? But I'm talking about deeper choices. For instance, say you were raised, you endured abuse when you were younger. How does that affect you now? How did it mold you? Did it mess with your thinking, with how you treat others? Maybe even your spouse or your children. You know, what if you grew up in a not so great environment? Does that mold you or keep you in neutral? Or do you make choices to change that? So that's what I'm referring to. Excuse me, on this episode, you have a choice. Because let's face it, many of us, if not all, either, excuse me, where we grew up or who we grew up around, it may not have been the greatest circumstances. We may not have had the greatest opportunities, and some people that stays with them. The anger, the bitterness. And when you hold on to all that negativity and the anger and the bitterness, is going to show up in your life every day. It's going to matter when it comes to your relationships, family, your workmates, your classmates. So it's things that we have to work throughout our life. Some people get in negative situations and they just keep their mind there in that state of negativity. But it takes effort. It's a fight every day to get your mind space where it needs to be. And that's on the positive level. Excuse me, I have like a little frog in my throat today. The weather isn't helping. So like I mentioned on my first episode, I was born in Chicago. So even though my parents, they tried to keep us in a environment where we could do good, my siblings and I, there were still things around us that were negative. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, and some spots they were rough. Bad environments, bad people, crime, gangs. So in 1977, no, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun. We moved from kind of like the inner city west side, and then we moved to an area more west in Chicago. And we were the first, I want to say this is around 1975. I was 5 years old. Just started kindergarten. So we moved to this block that was a little more west of the city. And we were the first black family on that street. So the first night we're there, someone threw a Molotov cocktail through our window. And we had double paned windows, and the police, when they came out, they said the flame, no doubt went out between the two panes of glass. So it went through the first pane of glass, and then flame probably went out, but then it came through the second pane of glass and landed in our living room. So, I'm young. I don't really fully understand what's going on. I just know that there's a bunch of police, Chicago police, coming in and out of our apartment. And this is, like late at night. Later on, as I grew up, my parents was telling me that, because I don't know how familiar you are with Chicago, but they were like race riots in the 60s. And so, there was still tension between the races. So my parents, my parents said not only did the police come, but there was an FBI agent that came, and also some members of the NAACP. So it was just like this huge ordeal. But we stayed, and eventually we got to know some of the neighbors. And I looked at how my parents dealt with it. They, of course, it was unsettling, but that didn't stop how we lived our life. And we stayed there for a couple of years. And then, like I said, in 1977, we moved to a suburb just right outside of Chicago called Maywood. So we moved to Maywood, and it was more African Americans there, but it was still like a mixed community. But I think back to that event when I was 5, and later in life, and as I tell you this, it played a part in my thinking and my mindset. That event that happened in our apartment when I was 5 years old. So we lived in the suburb of Maywood. Moved there in 1977. Then in 1983, my father's job moved us to Houston, Texas. Totally, a different environment. You're going from just a predominantly black area to down south. We were in the Southwest in Houston. And for the most part, it was good. I knew just from talking to people we met and knew, and some friends, it was a part of Houston that we stayed away from, which was east. Just the extreme east part of Houston, we kind of steered clear. But again, my parents, like they always wanted to do, they kept us in a mixed community. They always wanted us to be able to get along with anyone, which was great. It just, I feel that helps a person in life when they're used to just getting along with anyone. So Houston was where we lived there. I was 13 when we moved there. And when I was 19, my father's job, they wanted to move us to Atlanta. And that's how we came to be in Atlanta. So we lived in the suburbs west of Atlanta. It was about 20 miles west of Atlanta. So this was a predominantly white area, rural. Most of the area was rural. So they kind of, even moving there, we knew a family from Houston, and they were kind of telling us about the area. And the sheriff there didn't have the best of reputations when it came to dealing with other races. But, we had been through so much being in Chicago and Houston. So, we're just going to live our lives as normal. So I remember I got my first car was a Mustang, and it was like a flashy Mustang. It was, when I saw it, I fell in love with it. It was in the showroom, and it was a black car, had a gold racing stripe up the middle, had gold rims, so it was just all decked out. First car. So when I get it, my father told me, he was like, I just want you to be careful when you're driving, especially at night. Make sure, you don't speed. Just be careful. And I'm like, oh, it's no big deal. What's going to happen? This city is, like, compared to where we're from, this is small, no problem. So he just kind of looked at me and was like, okay, just be careful. I didn't really pick up what he was putting down. So one night we're leaving our religious meeting, and I drove alone. My family, the three of them were in their car. I was in my Mustang, and we're headed home. I think I was going to like McDonald's or something before I went home. So I'm going down one of the main streets of the city we live in, and I'm going 35, and the speed limit is 35. I'm listening to some old school hip hop, just having a good time. And I noticed a police car going the opposite direction. And like I said, I'm not worried. I'm not speeding or anything. But we kind of made eye contact and I kept driving. Look in my mirror and he flips a U-turn. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. He shoots up behind me, turns on his lights. I pull in the parking lot, like right next to a gas station. And I just kind of already know this, from experience. I don't get anything until they get up to the car. My window is down. We acknowledge each other. And, of course, he's asking for license, registration. And I let them know, okay, my license is in my pocket. I'm going to get it. And then my registration is in the glove box. He's like, okay, get it. And, he's shining his flashlight, watching what I'm doing. So the car is so new that I still just had all the paperwork from the point of sale. And the registration was in there. So I give him my license, all that paperwork. He just tells me he'll be back. The whole while I'm just, it's kind of weird. The way he approached me, the way his mannerisms, the way he's looking at me, the way he's talking to me, I felt uncomfortable. But I'm glad that I pulled over in a public area on a big 4-lane highway. So after a few minutes, I see his flashlight coming back. He didn't even hand my things back to me. He threw them on my lap, turned his flashlight off, walked away, got back in his car, and drove off. No explanation or anything. I was livid, and then it hit me. My father's words, be careful. Then it made sense. See, my father, he came up in a time in Mississippi. He was born in the 40s, but then he was a teen in the 50s in Mississippi. So they went through just a lot. They saw a lot. They had to deal with a lot. He said it was just a scary time. I know you have probably heard of like Emmett Till, getting killed for what was later found out to be a lie. And he got murdered, taken from his family and murdered. That was in Mississippi. So my father just came up in a different time. So when he was telling me to be careful, that's when it hit me. That's what Dad meant. You're in a totally different environment from what you're used to. You're going to have to be extra careful how you handle yourself, how you move around. So that occasion stuck with me. Just, I would say I was letting it go, but it festered and I would be upset. So then we fast forward a little bit more. And, I'm at this point, I'm married, have my son. And so I'm working at a job. I started working at a job locating underground utilities. And it was a nice job. It had a company vehicle. I got to be outside a lot. My office was basically the vehicle that I worked from, a lot of driving. So it was a fun job. Eventually, I moved up. The branch manager, he and I got along very well. Eventually, I get bumped up to a lead. And in that company, a lead was right under a supervisor. So my supervisor, great guy. We got along very well. We teased each other a lot about our different cultures. Because he was a Caucasian, and we had a nice time. We liked each other. Branch manager, we had a good time. I get in some days after work from being out in the field, and he and I would just talk 15 minutes, half an hour, just talking and laughing. So it was great. I got promoted to a lead. I was a lead for about I would say about 2 months, this gentleman moved from another state. I want to say Kentucky or Arkansas, somewhere like that. And he was in our team, but he threw the hugest fit daily because he did the same type of work where he moved from, but he was a supervisor. He felt like he had more experience than me, more qualifications, and he was very vocal about it. You know, he would tell me that all the time. And yeah, I saw him in the branch manager's office sometime. Other coworkers would tell me he was always talking to our supervisor, you know, about the same thing day in and day out. He was more qualified. Why am I the lead? He should be the lead. Do you know, in about a month after that, they demoted me back to just a regular technician, and he became lead. Again, I was livid. You know, I went to my supervisor, and he's heeing and hawing, and go talk to the branch manager. I didn't really agree with it, but you know, just keep on chugging along. That's what he told me. So I go talk to the branch manager, and he couldn't even look me in the eyes. And basically, he just said, "I'm sorry. I think you're a great worker. It is what it is. Just keep working hard." So again, I'm livid. Here's another thing under my belt where it's negative about race, and I'm just not saying I'm not throwing out the race card. I heard things that he said about me behind my back. The guy that moved from out of state. With him, it was very race related, the things that he said. And I brought it up to my supervisor. I brought it up to the branch manager. And they just kind of gave me the, you know, we're going to sweep it under the rug. You can either keep working or find employment elsewhere. So again, this is something that's in the back of my head. I try to let it go, but it's festering. And, you know, I got to the point where I was always being negative about it. And I wasn't brought up that way to feel a certain type of way about any race. You know, we're the human race. All bleed red. We're all imperfect. We all get sick. We can all die. So I wasn't raised to think that one race was superior than another one. But because of negative things that happened in my life, you know, starting from the age of 5, and then things in Houston, and then things in Georgia, you know, it affected me. I went to a job interview, and, you know, I really wanted this job, and this is in Georgia still. And I've been told that I sound totally different, you know, on the phone. Like, some people are surprised when they see me. So I had sent in my application, had a phone interview, and phone interview with the general manager went well. So he said, okay, next step is an in-person interview. We set that up. Both of us are excited to meet face to face. I walked in, told the receptionist, you know, who I was, why I was there. She just kind of looked at me. She called the general manager, said I was there. And, you know, she used my name. So he was, oh, okay, I'll be right up. I have a seat. He comes out where I'm waiting. He looks at me and he looks around and he was like, well, where is he? And she was like, that's him right there. And he was like, oh. And we had the interview. I went back to his office with him, and he even told me, he was like, I was not expecting to see you. And I know what he's talking about. So I played silly. I'm like, what do you mean? You weren't expecting to see, like, what are you talking about? And he didn't want to answer my question, but I knew good and well what he was talking about. Because I've had people tell me before that some people, they just say I sound white on the phone, and then my last name, they just not expecting me. And that's for, some people, not everyone. But, that stuck with me too. Needless to say, I did not get the job. I didn't even figure I would. Halfway through the interview, I even told myself, I was like, you are not getting this job, even though, on the phone interview, I was highly qualified. He just needed to meet me in person. So again, I had something negative that was stuck in my head. And then when we get away from those type of instances, situations, then, I have other things in my past, things I mentioned in episode 3, about being hurt by someone I used to love, as a relative. That's in my mind. And again, you try to let it go, try to put it behind me, but it's still festering. So I have all these negative things, and I'm not even telling you all the great experiences because of the color of my skin that I had in Georgia. But, again, it is what it is. Not holding any grudges now. I'm in a much better space mentally about all of that. But for a while, it did affect me a great deal. It affected how I looked at myself. It affected how I treated others, and I did and said things that I was not proud of. Because like I said, I wasn't raised to not like a specific race. I was raised to love everyone. And that's a big part of my faith. God is not partial to one race or, ethnicity. And that's what he wants and expects of us, to be the same way. So, that would weigh on my mind too. The way I was treating people, the way I was talking to people, just mean and rude, was because of how bitter I was at different experiences in my life. So I had to have just a long, hard talk with myself, and that's what it takes to realize that we have a problem somewhere, be honest with ourselves, and take steps to fix it, to rectify it. So as I always say, things don't happen overnight. We have to take things day by day. So I had to make a choice to be different. Yes, I grew up in, some situations weren't ideal. With what I saw, with what I was around, I went to school with gang members. And that's totally hard because I'm going to school with certain people who, they're affiliated with one gang. Other people, relatives and friends, they're associated with another gang. And you have all these outside influences, telling you better not hang with this gang. You better not, be seen with that gang. And it's, these are violent people. I had to deal with that. One day I'm walking to school, me and my friend, and it's I would say, a teen. He had to be like 17 or 18, and he's yelling on the side of a house to his friend. His friend comes to the window, lifts it up, like, "What do you want?" And he was like, "Hey, I need that piece." And, me and my friend, we're young. We're like in 3rd or 4th grade, and we're just walking real slow looking at him. And he's like, "Okay, I'll be right back." And he comes back with a pistol and just drops it to him. And was like, "I need it back tonight." And then they kind of looked at us, and we just like turned our heads straight, kept walking. And, they yelled something like, "Yeah, you better keep walking." These are the things, some of the things that I saw. I've seen people get, beat with sticks and like motorcycle chains, with little kids walking to school. And these are some of the things we saw. And then, I have those type of memories. I have the memories of people, whatever hangups they have against race, projecting that against me or loved ones. I have those memories. And it's just all of these things, and they can make you bitter. They can make you not like people or treat people mean. They can make you prejudge people. And, you might slip into that mindset of that's how they all are, no matter what group we're talking about. And, that's not how it should be. So I had to have some serious, fixing in my head, mentally, to realize everyone is not like that. Sad to say, there are bad people in every race, every ethnicity. We have to find the good in everyone. If we can't, or if they're not a positive person or a positive influence, then we have to get rid of them in our lives. But I had to make the choice to, like, every day find positive things. Like, yes, you've had some negative things happen. You've had negative things said to you. I've been called the N-word before. But I'm not going to let that define who I am. I'm not going to be this forever angry person, just mad at the world. That's just not me. It's not who I am, but that's who I started to slowly become. And it affected relationships. It affected my inner peace, my inner happiness. And when you're in that headspace, you're just not going to do well in life. Things are going to suffer. Relationships are going to suffer. You are suffering. And what's the name of my podcast? Love is your medicine. So, that's one of the ways we can care for ourselves and love ourselves is by the choices we make, how we choose to live our life. When negative things happen, how do you respond? Do you stay in that headspace, in a self-pity or negative headspace, and let that dictate your life? Or do you make the choice to be different? If you've been raised, say, in an abusive environment when you were young, you have a choice. I've known people on both sides of the coin. I've had people that say, this is how I was raised, and this is how I'm going to raise my children in a harsh, abusive environment. And then I've known people that say, I was raised in an abusive environment, I did not like it. I would never put my children through that. I choose to, even if I do get upset or angry, to not physically harm my children. I choose not to say things that will hurt them emotionally or mentally. They make the choice to be different, because we all have choices. We can either continue the cycle of negativity of things that happen to us, or we can make that change. We can be that change, to where we say it stops here. And I choose to live in a positive way. I want to be remembered as a positive person. Someone who helped people, not hindered people. So that's what I was getting at when I said we all have choices to make. And believe me, I know it's not easy to, forget things. In a way, we all, so we can't dwell on them, on negative thoughts, but, sometimes we need to remember. It's a phrase I always like to say that I heard before. You have to know where you come from so you can see where you're at. So we each were molded and influenced by certain things in our lives, positive and negative. So it's up to us to decipher all of that and let it build us. If it was negative things, what did you learn from them? What can you do to be different? How can you change, or how can you make changes to not be like that? I know a lot of people in Chicago and the big cities and urban areas, they feel they're stuck in that environment. They don't give us anything. Nothing can help us. Nothing can be done. And they continue cycles of violence or cycles of abuse. And they feel stuck. And that's a sad situation. Because we all have choices we can make to make changes, to change our environment. And again, it's not easy, but it can be done. I know a lot of people who've changed circumstances in their environment to better themselves. So whatever we're doing, whatever you're doing, make good choices. You don't have to feel stuck in negativity. Because take it from me, it's not a good place to be. Nothing comes good from negativity or just being angry and mad all the time. And remember too, we can't control other people. We can only control ourselves. So if someone is stuck in a negative way of life, you're gonna have to cut them out. It's that simple. I've already told Michelle, 2024 is my year of no nonsense. If something or someone is just a negative influence or is not making sense, I'm done. I'm cutting it out. I have a lot of things I have to focus on this year, with family and business, this podcast. So I have goals, and so I have no time for negativity from outside sources or myself. So make choices that are positive, that benefit you, and take it from me, don't get stuck in a negative mindset, especially from things that have happened to you in your past or things that might be happening to you currently. You have the choice to make the necessary changes that you need to. So I hope that this has helped you. If you have any questions or comments, I'd like to hear from you. My email address is mitch@themitchwright.com, and you can also find me on social media, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, at Love Is Your Medicine Podcast. So I would like to hear from you and hear any comments or feedback. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and have found value in it. Think about what choices you make. Think of it if there are any choices that you can do differently or that you need to make changes to do differently. Think of positive things that you can do for any negative aspects in your life now. You know, it's all about discovering what needs to be done and putting a plan together to make changes. So that's what I challenge you to do today and this week, is to think about any choices you need to make, even the hard choices, to create positivity and to keep and maintain positivity in your life. So I wish you a great day, a great week. Go and do great things.